Alrighty, welcome back, folks. Just a quick little video to kind of recap what happened last night for the Indy Fuel. Obviously, not the result that we're looking for, losing to Greenville 2-0. And also, what we're going to do here, really quickly, what we're actually going to start with is a quick rundown of the league standings and what's going on as far as, again, how the Kelly Cup playoffs are setting up. So we will start with the North Division, give you an update on the magic numbers and things with that. Again, Newfoundland has clinched a playoff spot. Their magic number is down to 7 for them to clinch the division. Adirondack doing a great job of beating Worcester. The Thunder have done a really, really good job this week of taking down the Railers. Right now, they're just 5 points back, still with 2 games in hand. So tonight's matchup between Adirondack and Worcester, being played England Falls, New York, that'll be a critical one for the Railers to obviously get at least a point in that one. That will be critical for them. But yeah, so North Division starting to tighten up a little bit. Maine starting to get a little bit of separation, as well as Reading. So the top 3 teams in the North Division are kind of separating themselves out, and then we've got Adirondack and Worcester that are kind of starting to tighten things up quite a bit. The South Division is an absolute just just an absolute treat to watch right now. Again, Jacksonville leading the division with 78 points. Again, there's 2 points from first through fourth separating these teams. So for Indy Fuel fans, Greenville needed that game a lot more than the Fuel did. Going to get down to the Central Division here in just a second. But with 11 games being played tonight, Jacksonville does not play tonight. But the game that I am watching the most right now is Maine at South Carolina. Right now, South Carolina third in the Southern Division. Excuse me. That's the game that I'm watching. You got the 35-23, 2-1 Maine Mariners at the 36-20, 4-1 South Carolina Stingrays. The Stingrays actually have 4 more points in standings than Maine does, but again, both teams are in third place in their respective divisions right now. This is South Carolina's first game of the week, and then this is the first of 2 that are being played in Charleston, where the Mariners have done fairly well on their southern trip so far, getting a win yesterday in Atlanta after winning on Wednesday in Orlando. So that's going to be interesting to see whether or not Maine can continue that winning streak. But yeah, Greenville right now, by virtue of fewer overtime wins, because Jacksonville has those 11 overtime wins. Both Jacksonville and Greenville have 25 regulation wins, and since Jacksonville has 11 overtime wins, that's why they are in first place. Not Greenville, even though Greenville does have a higher point percentage at this time. We're still 1 game in hand on the Iceman, and then Greenville will make up that game in hand today when they visit Toledo. So another great game to watch in the Southern Division. We have Newfoundland and Florida going at it yet again, a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals from a couple of years ago. So that game was fantastic on Wednesday. It was great again last night. So that's another one to watch. But yeah, things are shaping up again, like pretty much like it's going to be Jacksonville, Greenville, South Carolina, and Florida. Since unfortunately Atlanta was not able to beat Maine last night, the Gladiators, I believe, are off for the rest of the week. That game against Maine, as I believe they're only one this weekend. I'm just going to double check that here. Yeah, so that was the Gladiators' only game this weekend. So that is unfortunate for them. They only have 9 games remaining left on their schedule. But they do play Florida, I believe, in 3 of those games. So that is something to kind of watch out for. But again, with how good the Everblades are playing right now, I'm not quite sure that Atlanta's going to be able to catch them. And yeah, they actually play 4 times in April. So April 1st, 2nd, and then 14, 15. And then they play Jacksonville, 2 of those other games. So the Gladiators really have their work cut out for them in terms of whether or not they're going to make the playoffs or not. Moving on to the Central Division, Cincinnati starting to separate themselves out with their winning the first 2 games in Utah. That one surprises me a little bit. I think the Grizzlies have played very well against them, but it's pretty impressive to see Cincinnati coming together like that. I was also surprised to see Reading be the ones that ended Toledo's winning streak. Right now, it's looking more and more like it's going to be Toledo and Indy in that first round, and then it would be Cincinnati and Fort Wayne. Right now, Fort Wayne 12 points clear of Wheeling. Their magic number is just 5 for the Comets to clinch that final playoff spot in the Central Division. For the Fuel, right now, their magic number is 7 to clinch that third spot, so they really need these 2 wins against Kalamazoo in these upcoming 2 games. Their magic number, by the way, to be eliminated from winning the division is just 3. So if they, unfortunately, if Cincinnati wins and the Fuel lose to Kalamazoo tonight, that number will be down to just 1. So the Fuel really is their chances for winning the division are on life support. They still have mathematically a chance. I just don't think it's going to happen. Um, but the Fuel really do need to just turn things around after what happened last night. But I think again we're going to get into that after we look at the Mountain Division here really quickly. So we're going to go ahead and jump right back into the Mountain Division. Of course, Idaho has already clinched the division. How the rest of the Mountain Division playoffs are looking from second place down through sixth. So that is outside of the playoffs. They're separated by just 3 points. Right now, Kansas City is in second place. They're currently tied with Wichita with points, but because Kansas City has more regulation wins, that's why the Mavericks are ahead of the Thunder right now. Tulsa right now is, again, mathematically alive for the playoffs. Their playoff elimination number is 5. It is 4 for second or third place. But again, it's going to come down to pretty much the last day, I think, of the regular season to see whom is going to make the playoffs from that Mountain Division, with Kansas City, Wichita, Allen, Utah, and Rapid City all being separated by just 3 points. And the teams have from everywhere from 9 to 11 games left on their schedules. Wichita has the fewest games left to play with 9. And then Kansas City, Allen, and Rapid City all have 11 games left to play on their schedules. So that is where we stand on the standings. Really quickly, what my thoughts were as far as that game goes last night. I thought the Fuel, unfortunately, they were disjointed for quite a bit of that game. I think they kind of, I'm not quite sure what happened in terms of, I think that they scouted them, but I think maybe the players just didn't hear what Del Mayo was saying. Um, Again, I don't know what happened last night. I don't think that it was nearly as bad as I think as it felt. It did feel like it was just kind of a punch in the gut, and like the air was completely let out of the stadium when the Fuel played through the first 40 minutes and there was no score. It really just kind of felt like a slogfest, like just a mud fight between the two teams. And I think the Greenville playing in that Southern Division was a little bit more adept to come away with a win in a game like that. And I think that's why they did come out on top. Was they're used to more of those games where they're just slogging it out. And I think that Toledo kind of gave teams the MO for how to beat the Fuel, because if you really make the Fuel struggle in neutral ice, that's really the best way to beat them. If they can't really get into the zone, and it felt like the only time that the Fuel really had a chance to get an odd man rush, that's another thing that's been on the Fuel's calling cards this year, is the fact that when they get odd man rushes, that's when they play their best hockey. It really felt like the only time that the Fuel were able to get those odd man rushes was at the end of a shift, more often than not. So while it was frustrating as a fan to sit there and be like, "Come on, go!" You got to understand that if the guy's been out there for a minute and a half in his defensive zone, he really just doesn't have enough energy left on that shift to really go. So that was something that was frustrating. I don't think Driscoll played a bad game at all, stopping 30 out of 32 shots. So both teams only taking 1 penalty. I thought it was unfortunate that Nick Cardelli took the penalty when he did, and then allowing Greenville to score was not that great at all. And the Fuel's power play honestly didn't look that good either, but I think a lot of that was just kind of, they were completely out of the rhythm of their game by that point before Greenville even got called for that penalty. So that's kind of how I feel about that. They do have some reinforcements coming back down. Did see earlier this morning that Coltrane Wilson and Colin Bielek will be, or have already been, reassigned back to the Fuel. I know that there has been some griping, some grumbling about Coltrane Wilson. Me personally, I think he's a great presence. I don't think that anybody is necessarily wrong for feeling like he can stay up in Rockford. I can understand exactly where that animosity towards Coltrane is coming from. With him taking a handful of really bad penalties, and especially in that game against Toledo, he took a bad penalty. Again, were they going to lose that game anyway? I believe they were. But that still doesn't excuse the penalty. It was still a really bad penalty at a really bad time. So I understand completely the animosity towards him for that. But I think he provides a really, really good presence for the Fuel. I think one of his biggest flaws is honestly staying out there too long defensively on a shift. I noticed that a lot on the road. That Dalmea was very, very unhappy about him staying out there on the ice for longer than he really needed to for his shift and not letting enough of the guys cycle through. Um, I think it's going to be good to get Colin Bielek back, especially with that injury to Spencer Watson. So I think that getting a sniper like Bielek back, he's a really good scorer. I think that should help the Fuel. I think getting more time with Nick Cardelli and Tyler Coburn in the lineup. I've been really impressed, by the way, with Finn Evans. I think that coming up collegiately, he doesn't look like just a random college player. I think Coach Moore was exactly right. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. He's an incredibly intelligent hockey player, and I think he has done really well. And I think that he's absolutely primed to break through. And I think that that's going to be something to watch down the stretch, especially with this Kalamazoo team. Justin Taylor loves to just stay at the front of the net. He's like Justin Vive, except for he can skate a lot more than Vive can. But that's really what his game is to stand at the front of the net. And really what Kalamazoo's game, from what I've seen this year with them, is to really get under your skin and just kind of drive you crazy and frustrate the living you-know-what out of you to the point where you finally drop the gloves or you make a mistake or they get you leaning the wrong way, and that's when they're going to make you pay for it. I feel like Kalamazoo did a really good job of doing that last night in Wheeling. They were able to beat the Nailers 2-1. Wheeling right now, again, still mathematically alive for the playoffs, so that was a really, really big, impressive win, actually, for Kalamazoo to go into Wheeling and beat them 2-1. But I also feel like Kalamazoo's just kind of playing with free hockey right now. They're playing with house money. They know they're not making the playoffs. Again, mathematically, they're still alive, but I think most of the guys have understood it, that they're not making the playoffs. I don't think that Joel Martin has quite said that to them yet. I mean, their elimination number is 4, so it's possible that if they lose both games this weekend to Indy, excuse me, and if Fort Wayne finds a way to beat Rapid City 2 more times, then Kalamazoo would be eliminated from the postseason. But again, I think that Kalamazoo, again, they're playing with house money right now. So for the rest of the season, they're just going to be playing free and just trying to impress the coaches and impress other coaches in the league. So I'm looking forward to the Fuel coming back from that last night. Again, I think their goaltending was outstanding. Defense in front of it, not quite as much, but again, I don't think that it was absolutely awful last night. I think the biggest problem was just the fact that, like with Hunter Jones in Iowa, they just couldn't get the goalie moving side to side. That's probably the best, when the Fuel are at their best, is when they can get those odd man rushes and get the goalie thinking about moving side to side versus just squaring straight up to the shooter. And I think another really, really important thing against Fort Wayne that the Fuel have been very, very successful with is they've done a great job of getting those odd man rushes against the Wings so far this year. Their games up in Kalamazoo earlier this year, they did lose their past 2 in Kalamazoo. But when they've been successful against the K-Wings, that's what they've been able to do, was get those good odd man rushes, pepper the Kalamazoo goalies. The Kalamazoo goalies, unfortunately, are just not very good. The 2 K-Wings goalies, we can pull this up right here. Pull up all Kalamazoo goalies so far this year. Um, I mean, the best goals against average is Pavel Kahan. He's played in 11 games. His GAA is 2.37, and I mean their save percentages aren't great. So, with Hunter Vorva and Evan Cormier, again, not great, but um, everybody's over 909 in terms of save percentages. As a team, their save percentage is 907 with a 3.09 GAA in 61 games against. So that's not fantastic, but it's also not terrible. But I think that a lot of it has been the play in front of them, and that's really something that Kalamazoo's coaching staff, I think, has been worried about this year, is they're kind of like the Fuel of the 16-17 campaign, where they're just not very good, and unfortunately they're just leaving their goalies out to dry. So I think that that's something that the Fuel can take advantage of tonight. Hopefully this is not going to be a new opponent for the Fuel, so that's another thing that they have going for them. That has been something that unfortunately earlier this season I've seen some issues with, is when the Fuel have somebody that they're not that familiar with. It takes a toll on them, because usually you have to spend some time kind of quote unquote feeling each other out. So that's not going to be something that you really have to do here. You know what this team does to you. You know how this team likes to play you. So they should already have a game plan in place for that. And that's what I'm excited about for this weekend. So we'll see what happens in the game tonight. Don't forget, a little bit later than you scheduled start tomorrow, 4:05 versus 3 o'clock. So going to have another video coming up for tomorrow after the game tonight. So we'll see you tonight.